The silence in that house, it wasn't just quiet. It was a vacuum, sucking the air right out of my lungs. My home felt like a morgue, a cold, empty shell of what it once was. Zero on the screen of my bank app, a gut-wrenching, echoing zero in my chest. And there it was, stuck to the fridge with a magnet shaped like a smiling sun, one sticky note. Just 4 words that shattered my world. Thanks for the nest egg, Mom. I read it twice, then a third time, my mind desperately searching for the punchline, for the cruel joke that would make this all a nightmare. But the punchline never came. My own kid, Derek, the boy I carried through pneumonia, through those terrifying midnight fevers, the one I tirelessly worked to put through college, had scrubbed me out. 43 years of careful saving, of penny pinching, and prudent investments, gone. Swiped clean before the milk in the fridge even hit its expiration date. I didn't scream. The sound would have been swallowed by the vast, sudden emptiness of the house and my heart. I didn't even cry. Not then. The tears were trapped, frozen somewhere deep inside me. All I could manage was a whisper, a ragged breath that barely escaped my lips. Wrong woman. It wasn't a threat. Not yet. It was a promise. A cold, hard, unshakable vow. And with that whispered promise hanging in the air, I reached for the car keys. The game, I realized, had just begun. Family is forever. Isn't that what they always say? I believed it, truly. I even embroidered that saccharine sentiment on a pillow once, a testament to my unwavering faith in those bonds. I was that mom, the one who meticulously kept every single kindergarten drawing, neatly labeled and tucked away in tubs in the attic, the mom who believed in second chances, in endless support. When Derek, my only son, declared he wanted a gap year traipsing through Europe, I didn't bat an eye. I just refinanced the house, dipping into my equity, because that's what good mothers do, right? They sacrifice. When he finally settled down, or so I thought, and married Tiffany, I pulled out all the stops. I paid for the lavish reception, the designer dress she just had to have, and yes, even the open bar, despite my reservations about the cost. I wanted them to start their life together right. Then came Tiffany's mother, Marlene, a woman whose every other sentence seemed to begin with, "My daughter deserves." She bragged incessantly about a fixer-upper in the Poconos they were eyeing, a place they simply couldn't live without. And like a fool, blinded by the dream of grandchildren and a happy family, I co-signed the mortgage. They'll need a place for the babies someday, I told myself, trying to quell the tiny voice of doubt. But the babies never came. Only excuses did. The market's rough, Mom. We just can't get ahead. My startup is pivoting. It's a huge opportunity, but cash flow is tight. We just need a float until investors hit, Mom. Just a little something to tide us over. And like a leaky raft, I floated them. $500 here, $2,000 there, a steady stream of my hard-earned savings trickling into their endless financial void. Each request was accompanied by a promise of repayment, a heartfelt, "We'll pay you back, Mom, as soon as we're on our feet." Each promise was a lie. I kept floating them, my own resources dwindling, until my raft, my very foundation, finally sank beneath the weight of their deceit. I gave them everything, hoping for a future that was never meant for me. It was supposed to be a relaxing weekend, a brief escape. I'd gone to a regional craft fair, my little side hustle, selling the handmade quilts I poured my heart into. Visions of new designs and friendly chatter filled my mind. But when I pulled into my driveway Sunday night, the setting sun casting long, ominous shadows, a cold dread began to creep in. The front door was ajar, not just unlocked, but slightly open, a silent invitation to a scene of disarray. My dog, poor old Buster, usually a bundle of excited yips and tail wags, was whining softly from the backyard, his usual greeting replaced by a mournful cry. Inside, the house felt hollow, not just quiet, but emptied. My breath hitched in my throat as I walked through the living room. The closets in the spare room, where I kept my seasonal clothes and sentimental items, were gutted. Drawers hung open like gaping mouths. On the coffee table, usually cluttered with magazines and my reading glasses, sat a single, neat stack of mail. And nestled among the bills and junk mail, like a cruel parting gift, was my final bank statement. I picked it up, my hands trembling. Balance, $17.32s. $17.32. That was it. 43 years of work, gone. My fingers fumbled for my phone, dialing Derek's number, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs, straight to voicemail. A pre-recorded chipper message from the son who had just stolen my life. I tried Tiffany. Blocked. Marlene's phone rang in some dead zone, a phantom signal in the ether. They weren't just gone, they had vanished without a trace, leaving behind a void where my financial security used to be. Then I started to notice the smaller things. The Vitamix, a gift from my sister. Gone. The spare TV from the guest room, gone. And then the gut punch. My grandmother's gold locket, a family heirloom, a tiny piece of history, vanished from my jewelry box. Even the quarters I'd been saving in the laundry jar for those small, everyday conveniences were scooped clean. It was a professional job, a sweep so thorough, so clinical, that even the most meticulous cleaners couldn't have done better. They hadn't just taken my money. They had taken pieces of my past, my present, and my future. The sun didn't just rise that morning. It felt like it exploded. A brutal, unforgiving light searing through the kitchen window as I sat, numb and frozen, at the table. I'd been there all night, hunched over my laptop, fueled by a mixture of shock and a growing, icy resolve. One by one, I opened every financial app, every statement, every digital trail I could find. It was a forensic audit of my own life, meticulously peeling back the layers of betrayal. The transactions scrolled across the screen like a horror movie in slow motion. Credit card cash advances, thousands disappearing into the ether. Zelle transfers, countless small amounts, all sent to an account registered to Tiff Peterson. A transparent, pathetic attempt to hide Tiffany's involvement. And then, the clincher. A massive wire transfer to a crypto exchange, a name I couldn't even pronounce, let alone understand. It was a digital labyrinth, but the path led straight to them. The grand total, painstakingly tallied and rechecked, sent a fresh wave of nausea through me. $312,804. More than $300,000. It wasn't just my savings, it was my entire pension, the proceeds from my dad's house sale. His legacy, gone. It was the emergency fund I'd kept in a high-yield savings account, the one I'd promised myself would be there for my golden years. All of it, obliterated. And then I saw it, staring back at me from a digital document, my e-signature, forged. But not just any forgery. It was a near-perfect replica, with the same distinctive loops and flourishes I had painstakingly taught Derek in his second-grade penmanship class, the very loops I had admired, praised, and encouraged him to perfect. The irony of it all tasted like copper pennies in my mouth, bitter and metallic. The betrayal wasn't just financial. It was deeply personal, a twisting of the very lessons I had instilled in him. My son had used my own teaching against me, signing away my future with the very hand I had guided. Monday morning brought the badge and the badge knot. The officer, a kind-faced man with weary eyes, was sympathetic, yes, but brutally honest. He sat across from me in my quiet, now too large living room, listening patiently as I recounted the meticulous theft. "Family fraud gets messy, ma'am," he'd said, his voice laced with practiced regret. "It's often a tangled web of civil and criminal charges, with paper trails stretching across state lines. Could take years to unravel." Years. The word echoed in the empty spaces of my home, a cruel sentence. I didn't have years. I had a mortgage payment due in 12 days, a pressing deadline that mocked my sudden destitution. And my arthritis, a constant nagging companion, certainly wouldn't wait for a retirement I no longer owned. He handed me a victim's brochure, glossy and impersonal, and a case number, scribbled on a small card. It felt like a coat check ticket, a bureaucratic placeholder for a life that had been violently disassembled. A small, polite smile touched my lips as I thanked him, a mask I'd perfected over decades of navigating polite society. But inside, something shifted. A final fragile shard of naivety, of hope in the system, slid off and shattered. The police couldn't help me, not in the way I needed. The cavalry wasn't coming. It was just me. And in that moment, walking him to the door, I realized that if justice was going to be served, I would have to be the one to serve it. The helplessness I felt began to solidify into something else entirely, a cold, hard resolve. The initial shock had worn off, replaced by an inferno of cold fury. My hands, still trembling from the police visit, found their way to my laptop. I wasn't just looking for answers anymore. I was hunting. I Googled asset recovery, a clinical term for a desperate need. Down the rabbit hole I plunged, a dizzying descent into the dark underbelly of financial retribution. Private investigators, forensic accountants, white-collar task forces. Each click, each article, each contact form painted a picture of a world beyond my means. The quote started at a staggering $15,000 retainer, money I absolutely did not have. My heart sank, but only for a moment. This wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about reclaiming my dignity, my agency. The system, with its years and its costs, wasn't built for a woman like me, a woman who had just lost everything. And that's when the pivot hit, a flash of absolute clarity in the darkness. Revenge isn't a luxury, I realized. It's not something you hire out. It's a DIY project, a personal mission. I grabbed a fresh notebook, a clean slate for a very dirty war. I started a list. Not a grocery list, not a to-do list, but a list of every single person connected to Derek, Tiffany, and Marlene. Every friend, every former employer, every barista who ever, God forbid, misspelled Tiffany with an phi on her latte cup. If they had breathed the same air as my son, they had even a tangential connection to his new life, they were now data points. Potential leverage. I wasn't just going to get my money back. I was going to systematically dismantle their carefully constructed new lives, piece by painstaking piece. The hunt was on, and I was the predator. The digital world, I discovered, was a goldmine of carelessness. While I was grieving my stolen life, they were busy broadcasting their ill-gotten gains. My laptop became an extension of my rage, glowing until 3 a.m. most nights, the bitter taste of stale coffee replaced by the invigorating tang of impending justice. My first stop, TikTok. Marlene, the architect of so many of Tiffany's extravagant demands, was a surprisingly prolific poster. 2 days before my bank account was emptied, there she was, beaming, in a video titled, Girls Spa a Weekend. The geotag, clear as day. Pittsburgh. A quick mental note. The initial destination? Perhaps? A staging ground for their grand escape? Screenshot. Saved. Then Instagram. Tiffany's stories were a parade of self-indulgence. A close-up shot of a freshly manicured hand, nails painted the exact shade of Amex blue. The same color as my missing credit card, no doubt. A new designer handbag, a lavish meal, a scenic view that looked suspiciously like a coastal resort. Each post was a breadcrumb, leading me closer to the truth, to their new, extravagant lives built on my ruins. Screenshot after screenshot, meticulously categorized. Facebook, the digital graveyard of forgotten connections, yielded Derek. His job status, updated with an air of casual professionalism, now read remote consultant. Translation, fled. He was trying to project an image of legitimate work, but I knew better. It was a flimsy veil over a life of crime. I screenshotted everything, every smiling selfie, every vague update, every boastful comment. My desktop became a battlefield of folders, evidence, receipts, future court. Each digital artifact was a weapon, carefully cataloged and organized. I felt like a detective, a forensic accountant, and a scorned mother all rolled into one. The more I dug, the more their hubris shone through. They thought they were invisible, untouchable. They thought the digital world was their shield. But I was learning that the internet, like a vengeful memory, never truly forgets, and I was going to use every single one of their digital footprints to track them down. My first strategic move involved the Poconos house, that ill-fated investment I'd co-signed for. I dialed the mortgage broker, adopting a sweet, almost naive tone, feigning interest in refinancing a property I technically didn't own, but was still liable for. I buttered up the clerk, a young woman who sounded bored and overworked, spinning a tale of wanting to help my family explore their options. With a little charm and a lot of persistence, I sweet-talked her into emailing me the entire loan package. And there it was, in black and white, my signature still binding me to their debt. But nestled within the reams of legal jargon, I found it. A prepayment clause, a tiny, almost invisible lifeline. If the principal balance was zeroed out, my liability would evaporate. The house would be theirs, but my name, my financial obligation, would be gone. It was a small victory, but a crucial one. Now for the money. My side hustle, quilt making, suddenly became a lifeline. I listed a quilt on Etsy for $400. It sold, and then another, then 10. Each stitch, each sale, was a tiny act of defiance, a reclaiming of my power. That was my seed money, my war chest. 3 hours. That's how long the drive to the Poconos felt, each mile a silent affirmation of my resolve. When I finally pulled up to the house, a quaint, rustic structure that now symbolized their deceit, I took a deep breath. I knocked. Marlene's smug face, framed by a messy blonde beehive, peeked through the curtain, her eyes narrowed in suspicion. I smiled, a genuine unsettling smile, and extended an envelope. Inside was a legal notice of lien, a formal document outlining my claim on the property due to their fraudulent activities. Her eyes scanned the document, her expression shifting from suspicion to dawning horror. "Enjoy the view while you own it," I told her, my voice calm, almost serene. Her smirk, that irritating perpetual smirk, melted faster than soft-serve ice cream in July. It was the first real crack in their facade, and it was glorious. I hadn't just handed her a piece of paper. I delivered a cold, hard dose of reality, and the satisfaction was intoxicating. With the Poconos house lien in place, a new wave of ideas hit me. Their comfort, their very ability to live their lavish new life, was predicated on my generosity, my credit. It was time to turn off the tap. My next calls were to the utility companies, power, water, internet. Each account, I discovered, was conveniently still under my name, my credit rating allowing them to live in blissful, connected ignorance. I requested immediate disconnects. The customer service representatives, bless their hearts, asked the usual questions. "Is there a new tenant? Are you moving?" I simply stated, with a calm, unwavering voice, that I was no longer responsible for the property. "The occupant can reestablish service with a deposit," they chirped, seemingly unaware of the silent war I was waging. "Fine by me," I replied, a grim smile playing on my lips. "Let them light candles with my money. Let them shiver in the dark." I pictured Derek's phone lighting up with a flurry of service interruption emails, his face contorting in confusion and then anger. I imagined him scrambling, hunting for Wi-Fi like a desperate raccoon rummaging through trash cans, trying to maintain his remote consultant charade. Tiffany, without her Instagram, without her online shopping, would be utterly adrift. And Marlene, well, Marlene would probably blame everyone but herself. It was a small, almost petty act, but it was incredibly satisfying. It wasn't just about inconvenience. It was about control. They had taken my financial independence. Now, I was taking theirs, one basic necessity at a time. Every click, every polite conversation with a customer service agent was a precise, calculated strike. They wanted to live off my back? Fine. But they wouldn't do it with my electricity, my running water, or my internet connection. The well was dry. The financial world, I was learning, had its own intricate dance, and I was quickly mastering the steps. Next on my list, a full-scale credit lockdown. Experian, Equifax, TransUnion, the 3 credit reporting agencies. One click, then another, then a third. I froze my profile so hard, so completely, that even I couldn't open a new gas card if I wanted to. It was a digital fortress, impenetrable to anyone, especially my son and his accomplices. But freezing my credit wasn't enough. They had already used it. So I filed fraud alerts, meticulously detailing every forged transaction, every unauthorized charge, every penny they had siphoned from my accounts. This meant compiling affidavits, sworn statements detailing the fraud, a stack of paperwork that would make any bureaucrat weep. Banks, I quickly discovered, absolutely hate paperwork. They hate the liability, the investigation, the endless loops of verification. And that hatred worked to my advantage. Within a week, the first notification started pinging on my phone. A reversal here, a refund there. $18,000? It was a small drip in a canyon-sized hole. But it was $18,000 back in my account. Every refund notification pinged like a bell in an empty boxing ring, a clear, unmistakable sign that I was winning rounds. Each ping was a tiny victory, a reaffirmation that my fight wasn't futile. It was a slow, arduous process, but I was chipping away at their ill-gotten gains, one meticulous paperwork-laden step at a time. The system might be slow, but it wasn't entirely blind. And now, it was working for me. Derek's LinkedIn profile, that carefully curated facade of professionalism, listed his new remote gig. He thought he was untouchable, hidden behind a screen. But I knew better. I found the company's website, then their CEO's email address. I crafted a carefully worded message, polite yet subtly menacing, like a velvet glove concealing a steel fist. "I'm so impressed by your new consultant, Derek," I began, pouring on the false praise. "His skills are truly unique. I was hoping we could discuss his non-compete clause at his previous position. It's a rather intricate legal document, and I wouldn't want any misunderstandings for your firm. And then, the coup de grace. I attached a redacted copy of the criminal report I'd filed, carefully obscuring my name, but leaving enough detail to make it clear what kind of consultant they'd hired. The next day, I checked LinkedIn. Derek's status had flipped, from remote consultant to open to work, just like that. His carefully constructed professional reputation, a flimsy house of cards, had collapsed with a single, well-placed email. Reputation, I realized, is currency, and I had just bankrupted his. The satisfaction was profound. A deep, resonant hum of vindication. He thought he could steal my money and build a new life, a new career, on my shattered dreams. But I showed him that some debts aren't just financial. Some debts are paid in public humiliation, in lost opportunities, in the slow, agonizing erosion of everything you thought you had built. That baffling crypto exchange, the one with the name I couldn't pronounce, had been a thorn in my side. It felt like a black hole, a place where money went to disappear forever. But I was learning fast. I initiated a subpoena, a legal demand for information, targeting the exchange directly. I expected resistance, delays, a wall of digital obfuscation, and what I got was surprisingly swift compliance. The compliance officer, a surprisingly helpful individual once they understood the severity of the fraud, answered my subpoena faster than my son had ever answered my calls. They froze the wallet, pending investigation, of course. Derek had thought blockchain meant invisible, anonymous, untraceable. He thought he'd outsmarted the system, that his digital loot was safely hidden in the murky depths of the internet. But I showed him that immutability works both ways. Once a transaction is on the blockchain, it's there forever. And once a wallet is frozen, it's frozen. $46,000 in Ether, locked tighter than Tupperware at a picnic, completely inaccessible to him. The invisible money was now immovably stuck, a digital monument to his short-sighted greed. It was a complex technical victory, but a victory nonetheless. The world of cryptocurrency might be new and bewildering, but the principles of theft and accountability, I discovered, were ancient and universal, and I was learning to wield them with surprising dexterity. Local news loves a tearjerker segment, especially when it involves a sympathetic victim and a villainous family member. I knew this. I'd watched enough of them. So I called the Consumer Reporter, pitching my story with a carefully modulated voice, a hint of vulnerability, and a powerful hook. Elderly widow swindled by beloved son, exclusive. The camera crew arrived, their lights bright and intrusive, illuminating the quiet devastation of my home. I chose my outfit carefully, a soft lavender blouse, a color that conveyed vulnerability and a quiet dignity. I spoke softly, my voice trembling ever so slightly, letting the camera zoom in on my hands, clasped together, conveying a fragility I no longer truly felt. I recounted the story, every painful detail, every betrayal, every lost penny, but I did it with a quiet strength, a resilience that I hoped would resonate. The story aired at 6. By 6:30, my inbox was flooded, not with spam, but with messages of support, tips, GoFundMe offers from strangers, and countless emails calling Derek a parasite, a monster, a disgrace. Public shame. It was free, it was incredibly effective, and I found, to my surprise, it was addictive. The outpouring of empathy, the collective outrage, was a balm to my wounded spirit. It wasn't just my fight anymore. It was our fight. And the sheer weight of public opinion, the collective condemnation of his actions, was a force no amount of money could buy. Derek wanted to live a life of secrecy and deceit? Fine. But he would do it under the harsh, unforgiving glare of public scrutiny. The news segment had ignited a fire, not just in the public, but in me. I realized the power of official channels, the relentless grind of bureaucracy. My kitchen table, once a place for family meals, was now a war room. I compiled every document, every screenshot, every bank statement, every piece of evidence into a meticulously organized system. Letters to district attorneys in 2 states, outlining the criminal fraud and elder abuse. An FTC complaint, detailing the financial deception. An FBI elder fraud form, because my case, I realized, crossed state lines and involved significant sums, making it a federal matter. It was bureaucracy origami, folding and refolding documents, filling out forms with painstaking detail, each signature a declaration of war. I color-coded my folders like I once did for Derek's science fair projects: blue for banking, green for legal, red for social media evidence. The difference, I thought with a grim smile, was that this project wouldn't earn a participation ribbon. This project was about winning. It was about justice. The sheer volume of paperwork, the methodical accumulation of evidence, became a ritual, a tangible expression of my unwavering resolve. Every stamp, every envelope sealed, was a step closer to making them face the consequences of their actions. I was turning their digital carelessness into a mountain of paper that would eventually bury them. The internet, in its vast interconnected web, often throws up unexpected allies, or in this case, unwitting informants. Derek's high school buddy, Jamie, a name I hadn't thought about in years, slid into my DMs. "Hey, Mrs." My last name. The message read, "I heard about Derek. He told us you were in a home. Dementia stuff. Said you were happy there." Dementia stuff. The lie, so casually spun, so easily believed by his old friends, ignited a fresh spark of fury. He wasn't just stealing my money. He was stealing my reputation, my sanity, painting me as a doddering old woman incapable of managing her own affairs. Nice narrative, kid. I muttered to myself, my fingers already flying across the keyboard. I didn't engage in a shouting match. I didn't even correct him verbally. Instead, I mailed Jamie a discreet, carefully selected packet. Inside, notarized copies of the fraud report, bank statements showing the unauthorized transfers, and a printout of the police report. No commentary, no emotional pleas, just the cold, hard facts. Gossip, I knew, spreads faster than wildfire in a drought. And this kind of gossip, backed by undeniable evidence, was explosive. Within days, the ripple effects began. Former friends, once loyal to Derek, unfollowed en masse. Social media posts about Derek's new life disappeared. The silence from his former circle was deafening. Social death, I mused, was far cheaper than hiring a hitman, and arguably just as effective. He wanted to invent a narrative about my mental decline? Fine. I just let the truth about his moral decline speak for itself. My lawyer friend, the one who eventually took my case pro bono, more on her later, advised me to start small, build momentum. Small claims court. The maximum amount you can sue for typically is around $12,000. It wasn't about the full $312,000. It was about establishing a legal precedent, a judgment in my favor. I sued for the quilt sale inventory they'd stolen from my craft room, not just the finished quilts, but the expensive fabrics, the specialized tools, the batting. I didn't just claim their market value. I claimed their sentimental value, the hours of painstaking work, the creative energy poured into each piece. I quantified it at $9,500, a figure just under the small claims limit, but significant enough to sting. They never showed. Of course they didn't. They were too busy living their grand, stolen life, probably convinced this was just another petty annoyance that would eventually disappear. But in their absence, a default judgment was entered in my favor. $9,500. A drop in the bucket, yes, but a legally binding drop. I mailed the official court order, certified mail, to their last known address, a transient hotel in Tampa, discovered through some clever online sleuthing. The subject line, scrawled by hand, was particularly satisfying. Your inheritance just shrank. It was a small victory, a procedural win, but it was a clear statement. The wheels of justice, however slow, were beginning to turn, and every small turn was a reminder that I wasn't just sitting back and taking it. I was fighting back, one legal document, one small judgment at a time. Marlene's car. Oh, that car. A sleek late-model sedan, leased in my name, another one of their ingenious schemes to leverage my credit. I had completely forgotten about it in the initial chaos, but it resurfaced during my meticulous audit. It was time for another strategic strike. I called the leasing company, calmly explaining the situation. Unauthorized use of a vehicle leased under my name. I filed a police report, not against Marlene directly, but for the theft of the car, citing her continued possession despite my explicit withdrawal of consent. It wasn't about criminal charges for the car itself. It was about getting it back and removing my liability. The repo guy, a burly man with a no-nonsense demeanor, found it parked at a casino in Florida, a fitting tableau for Marlene's lifestyle choices. He called me, his voice crackling with amusement, and asked if I wanted to watch. Via his body cam feed, I saw it all unfold. Marlene, sprinting across the parking lot in slippers, a cigarette dangling precariously from her mouth, her face a mask of pure, unadulterated panic. "That's my lifeline," she shrieked, her voice echoing through the body cam speaker. The repo man, bless his heart, simply shrugged. "Ma'am, it's technically hers." I replayed that clip countless times, particularly when I needed a lullaby. The sheer, unbridled fury on Marlene's face, the desperate scramble, the cold, factual response of the repo man. It was a symphony of poetic justice. Another piece of their stolen comfort, another fragment of their ill-gotten life, snatched away. It wasn't just a car. It was a symbol. And watching it disappear on the back of a tow truck was a deeply satisfying moment of triumph. The weight of my collected evidence was becoming substantial, both literally and figuratively. Every judgment, every freeze notice, every utility disconnection letter, every police report, I compiled them all. I didn't just print them. I had them professionally bound into a sleek, imposing booklet. It was a testament to their deceit and my relentless pursuit of justice. Then, the final exquisite touch. I addressed the package to Tiffany's parents, the unwitting financiers and enablers of their daughter's extravagant lifestyle. And inside, attached to the first page of the damning compilation, was a single, familiar sticky note. The same brand, the same pale yellow color, the same size as the one Derek had left on my fridge. But my message was different. Scrawled in my neatest script were the words, "Thanks for the memories." Postage, 8 all 95. Satisfaction, immeasurable. I pictured the moment they opened it, the dawning horror as they flipped through the pages, seeing the full ugly truth of their daughter and son-in-law's actions, the legal and financial fallout that was now rapidly engulfing their family. It wasn't just a package, it was a bomb, delivered by courier, designed to detonate their carefully constructed illusion of respectability. They had stood by, benefited from, or at the very least, ignored the red flags of their children's behavior. Now, they would reap the whirlwind. Months later, the phone call came. A detective from a Florida precinct. "Ma'am, we have a Derek, my last name, in custody. He tried to pawn a gold locket. The shop flagged it as stolen. My grandmother's locket. The final piece of the puzzle, the sentimental item I thought was lost forever. A strange mix of relief and a cold, hard ache settled in my chest. The officer asked if I wanted to press charges. Did I? The question hung in the air, heavy with unspoken history. I drove down. A 6-hour journey that felt like a lifetime. I walked into that sterile precinct, the smell of stale coffee and desperation thick in the air. They led me to a small room, a thick pane of glass separating us. And there he was. My boy. He looked smaller somehow, shrunken and defeated. His beard was unkempt, his eyes darting around like trapped mice, hollow and devoid of their former arrogance. The bravado, the charming smile, the confident swagger, all gone, replaced by a desperate, pathetic fear. He saw me, and for a fleeting moment, a flicker of something akin to recognition, or perhaps shame, crossed his face. I didn't bail him out. The thought didn't even cross my mind. Instead, I signed the victim impact form, my hand steady, my resolve unwavering. I documented the emotional toll, the financial devastation, the profound betrayal. It was my final act as his mother, a mother who had loved him unconditionally, a mother who was now choosing justice over misplaced mercy. On the way out, as I passed his cell, I whispered, just loud enough for him to hear, "Class dismissed." It was the end of his education at my expense, the final lesson in a very hard school. The legal system, I'd learned, could be an infuriating labyrinth, but it also held powerful tools. My lawyer friend, Sarah, a sharp, no-nonsense woman I'd known since college, had heard about my story through the grapevine, probably via the news segment or Jamie's gossip train. She called me, not to offer condolences, but to offer her services. Pro bono. "Publicity perk," she'd said with a wry smile, but I knew it was more than that. She believed in justice. We filed civil racketeering claims. This wasn't just about recovering my money. It was about punishing them for their organized, predatory scheme. Racketeering meant triple damages, a powerful legal hammer against their financial misdeeds. The stakes were suddenly much higher. The settlement conference was a tense affair. Derek, represented by a surprisingly meek public defender, looked even smaller than he had in the jail cell. His counsel proposed a payment plan, a paltry $50 a month, essentially, until the sun burned out. It was an insult, a transparent attempt to kick the can down the road indefinitely. I countered. My voice was calm, firm, leaving no room for negotiation. A lump sum. The immediate sale of his remaining crypto assets, the ones I had frozen. And the full title transfer of the Poconos house, free and clear, to me. They folded like a lawn chair. The evidence was too overwhelming, the legal threat too severe. A few days later, a notification pinged on my phone. Wire hit my account. $211,647. It wasn't the full $312,804 they'd stolen, but with the house, the car, and the small claims judgments, I was well over 2/3 of the way back. It wasn't whole, but it was breathing room. It was a foundation. It was enough to begin again. The fight had been long, arduous, and emotionally draining, but I had won. With a significant portion of my funds recovered, I didn't just lick my wounds. I began to heal, one stitch at a time. My quilt shop, once a small side hustle, became my main focus. I rebranded it, Second Chance Stitches. The name resonated deeply not just with me, but with the public. Sales quadrupled after the news segment aired. Turns out, people love a comeback story, especially one with a bit of grit. I wasn't just making quilts anymore. I was building a business. I hired a bookkeeper, a meticulous woman who understood the importance of every penny. I brought on 2 seamstresses, talented women who shared my passion for fabric and design. We expanded our online presence, took on custom orders, and even started offering quilting classes. And this time, I was smart. I set up automatic fraud alerts on every single account, every credit card, every investment. 2-factor authentication became my best friend. Every transaction, every login was scrutinized. Lesson learned, permanently etched into my financial DNA. Trust, but encrypt. Trust, but verify. Trust, but always, always protect yourself. My shop wasn't just a business. It was a symbol of resilience, a testament to turning pain into purpose. Healing isn't a straight line. It's a patchwork, much like my quilts. My new normal included therapy Thursdays. My first session? I raged for 50 solid minutes, a torrent of anger, betrayal, and grief pouring out of me. It was raw, ugly, and absolutely necessary. But slowly, week by week, the focus shifted. By my 10th session, I was talking about composting, about the joy of nurturing life in the soil, about the possibility of adopting granddogs someday, a gentle way to acknowledge the empty space where a traditional family future once sat. It wasn't about forgetting. It was about processing, about integrating the trauma into the tapestry of my life without letting it define me. The therapist, a kind, insightful woman, helped me see that the anger, while valid, was also a heavy burden. We explored the emotional cost of holding on to resentment, even righteous resentment. Healing wasn't about erasing the past, but about learning to carry it differently. Like a cherished quilt, my life was now a collection of experiences, some beautiful, some torn, but all woven together to create something unique and resilient. The therapy wasn't just about coping, it was about finding new patterns, new designs for living. There were moments, late at night, when the old familiar ache would return. A phantom limb of maternal love, yearning for the son I once knew. In those moments, I would sit down and draft an email to Derek. I never sent them, but the act of writing was a release, a way to articulate the unarticulatable. I love the child you were, Derek, one draft began, the curious, kind boy who used to bring me wildflowers. I grieve that child, but I cannot love the man you chose to become, the man who stole not just my money, but my trust, my peace, my future. Another time, I wrote about the weight of his choices, the ripple effect of his betrayal, the gaping hole he'd left in my life. Each time, after pouring out my heart, I would read it, reread it, and then, with a heavy sigh, delete it. Some conversations, I realized, can only happen in silence. Some truths are too profound, too painful to be spoken aloud, especially when the recipient is incapable of hearing them. It wasn't about forgiveness, not yet. It was about acceptance. Acceptance that the son I knew was gone, and the man who remained was a stranger. And sometimes, silence is the only language left. The Poconos house, that symbol of their deceit, now fully mine. I kept it, not out of spite, but as a tangible reminder of my victory and a practical investment. I renovated it, turning it into a charming vacation rental. It became a new source of income, a place where others could find peace and escape. The first guest left a 5-star review. Quiet, secluded, perfect for reflection. I smiled when I read that. Reflection. That's what mirrors do best, isn't it? And this house, once a source of bitter reflection on betrayal, now offered a different kind of contemplation. It was a space for quiet contemplation, for new beginnings, for others to make their own happy memories. It was a full circle moment. What they had intended as a burden, a place for me to be liable for, I had transformed into an asset, a sanctuary. The Poconos, once a symbol of their broken promises, became a testament to my resilience. And every time a new booking came in, it was a quiet, satisfying echo of the battle I had fought and won. If you're riding the high road, but tempted by the off-ramp of revenge, if you've ever been pushed to your breaking point and wondered what comes next, smash that subscribe button. I've got more real-life grit coming, more stories of turning devastation into determination, and you won't want the algorithms deciding you miss it. Comment below. Would you have taken the money or taken the mercy? Would you have fought back or walked away? Let me know your thoughts. The consequences of their actions and my retaliation continued to ripple outwards, touching every corner of their lives. Tiffany's parents, once so proud and outwardly respectable, downsized to a trailer park. Their Facebook posts, once filled with boasts of exotic vacations, now spoke of simpler living and finding joy in modesty. The subtle hint of bitterness was unmistakable. Derek. He faces felony counts in 2 states now, the weight of his choices finally catching up to him. A plea deal is pending, but whatever the outcome, his life as he knew it is irrevocably altered. Marlene, the instigator of so much of Tiffany's entitlement, simply vanished from social media, her digital footprint erased, perhaps by choice, perhaps by shame. And my inbox? It still floods with messages, not just from friends, but from strangers across the globe. You gave me strength to audit my own family accounts, one read. Your story made me realize I'm not alone, said another. That I realized was a dividend no thief could wire transfer. It was a return on investment far more valuable than any money. The impact of sharing my story, of showing others that they too could reclaim their power, was a profound and unexpected gift. Victory has a cost, even sweet victory. I sleep 8 hours now, mostly uninterrupted, a luxury I hadn't enjoyed in years, but I still check the locks twice before bed, a subconscious habit born of betrayal. PTSD, I've come to realize, wears an accountant's visor. It's not the dramatic flashbacks you see in movies. It's the quiet vigilance, the heightened awareness, the subtle shift in how you perceive the world. The price of peace, I've learned, is eternal vigilance. And a shredder. A heavy-duty cross-cut shredder that could devour credit cards like butter, turning sensitive documents into confetti. It sits proudly in my home office, a constant reminder of the importance of protecting oneself. The emotional scars remain, faded but present, like the faint lines on an old quilt, but they are scars of survival, of strength, of a battle fought and won. They remind me that while the world can be cruel, I am tougher. If I could whisper a few words of wisdom to the woman I was before all this, the one who so readily opened her heart and her wallet, this is what I'd say. First, don't co-sign what you can't afford to lose. That mortgage, that car lease, that seemingly innocuous favor. It's not just a signature. It's a direct link to your financial future. If you wouldn't hand them the cash outright, don't put your name on the line. The potential for loss is always greater than the perceived gain of helping. Second, love doesn't mean unlimited ATM. Your love is a precious resource, not an endless supply of money. A true love, true support, isn't about enabling destructive behavior or sacrificing your own security. It's about setting boundaries, even when it hurts. It's about teaching responsibility, not fostering dependency. And finally, if someone empties your bank, remember this: you still own your backbone. They can take your money, your peace, even pieces of your past, but they cannot take your spirit, your resolve, your inherent strength. That, my dear past self, is yours alone, and it is more powerful than any amount of money they could ever steal. Revenge. It's a word loaded with judgment, often painted as a dark, destructive force. For me, it felt good at first, a rush of righteous indignation and power. Then, as the initial high faded, it felt empty. A hollow victory, a bittersweet taste in my mouth. Was this all there was? But then, a deeper understanding settled in. It wasn't just about vengeance. It was about necessity. Justice isn't a warm hug, a comforting embrace that makes everything okay. It's a cold invoice, a precise, calculated demand for accountability, payable in full, no payment plans, no excuses, no exceptions. It was about restoring balance, about saying, definitively, that actions have consequences. It was about reclaiming my dignity, my agency, not just for myself, but for every other victim of familial fraud. The moral gray, I realized, is where life truly happens. It's where you navigate the complexities of right and wrong when your world has been turned upside down. And sometimes, in that gray, revenge isn't just justified. It's the only path to true justice. The fire that fueled my revenge has cooled, replaced by a steady, unwavering warmth of purpose. I'm mentoring elder fraud victims at the community center now. We meet once a week, a small group of survivors, gathered around a worn table. We drink cheap coffee, share our horror stories, and practice two-step verification like it's choreography. We laugh, we commiserate, and we learn. It's a different kind of investment, a different kind of dividend. Community, I've discovered, is the interest you earn when you stop funding toxicity and start investing in connection. These women, these men, they understand. They don't judge. They listen. And in sharing our vulnerabilities, we find strength. We learn to spot the red flags, to build our digital defenses, to trust our instincts. It's about empowering each other, about turning individual pain into collective resilience. It's a beautiful, unexpected chapter in a life I thought was over. Amidst all the chaos and rebuilding, something truly unexpected emerged. A quilt design, born out of the raw emotion of my ordeal, started as therapy. Each stitch, each patch represented a piece of my brokenness, slowly sewn back together. It was a visual diary of my journey from victim to survivor. I named it Zero Balance, Full Heart. It hung in my studio for months, a personal testament. Then, a gallery owner, who had heard my story, saw it and was deeply moved. She asked to exhibit it, and to my astonishment, it sold. For $6,000. It was proof, tangible and beautiful, that even the most shattered scraps can become something whole, something valuable, something artful. My pain, my betrayal, my fight. It had all been transmuted into a piece of art that resonated with others. It wasn't just a quilt. It was a symbol of transformation, a testament to the enduring human spirit. It was the unexpected gift, the silver lining in a very dark cloud, proving that even from the ashes of betrayal, something truly beautiful can rise. So hit subscribe if you believe accountability beats enabling, if you believe that sometimes the only way forward is to fight back. Drop a comment. Could you forgive a child who robbed you blind? Is there a line that, once crossed, can never be uncrossed? Share this with anyone who thinks parents are pushovers, with anyone who believes family means unconditional acceptance of bad behavior. Because sometimes the softest hands stitch the tightest nets. And remember this, when family turns predator, you can choose to be prey, or you can choose to be the storm. The choice, my friends, is always yours.